House Republicans push for the U.S. to recognize Taiwan. Putting food on the table, Taiwan helps Palau make sure it can feed itself. Thailand's Prime Minister vows to work with China to crack down on online fraud. Plus,
we're here at Taiwan's biggest anime festival, where some of the biggest stars are virtual.
a warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Dozens of U.S. House Republicans are pushing President Donald Trump to establish official ties with Taiwan. Harrell Hughes tells us more.
A proposal to officially recognize Taiwan is gaining traction in the U.S. House of Representatives. At least 24 Republicans have endorsed the resolution put forth by Representatives Tom Tiffany and Scott Perry for U.S. President Donald Trump to officially abandon the current U.S. policy toward China and Taiwan. That policy, called the One China policy, has been in place since the 1970s, and it sees the U.S. maintain unofficial relations with Taiwan while also acknowledging but not backing Beijing's claims over the island. Taiwan has had consistent support from Congress over the years, but this year there's renewed hope for a breakthrough.
国会挺台湾的这个力道，我们必须要维持住。可是，我想我们可能必须要设法强化跟这个行政团队的关系。
Now, this is not the first time this resolution has been presented to the House. It has been put forth by the 2 Republican representatives every year since 2020. But they are hoping that under a new administration and growing threats of a trade war between the U.S. and China, Taiwan could gain even more support, this time from the president himself. John Su and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Donald Trump has moved to freeze or cut off most foreign aid and funding in recent weeks. This will affect the work of NGOs providing reliable information about China. To learn more, Jeremy Olivier spoke with Bethany Allen, head of China Investigations and Analysis at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute.
The Trump administration has frozen nearly all foreign funding as it seeks to drastically reduce federal spending. How has this move impacted NGOs doing work in China?
There are many programs and organizations that have received grants from the State Department for all different kinds of work. And there's I would call it an entire ecosystem of nonprofits that work on China from outside of China that are quite dependent on those grants from the State Department. And since those have been frozen, dozens of organizations are in crisis. They're having to lay off staff. They're facing imminent closure, and their work, even if they aren't at this time facing imminent closure, is already being damaged, and in some cases irreparably. These kinds of organizations play a crucial role in our information space about what we know about China. They tally local protests in China. They document human rights abuses. They document the Uyghur genocide. They track Chinese media censorship. And they do things on a really granular level that really no one else does.
How is it that these groups have become so reliant on funding from the U.S.?
There's a number of reasons that we've gotten to this place. One of them is that foreign NGOs used to be able to operate in China, but the 2017 foreign NGO law in China essentially made their work illegal, and they had to leave China. A second reason is that they are quite dependent on government funding because the Chinese government, as we all know, uses the power of access to its economy to control what businesses do and say, and what rich people do and say. So why aren't other democratic governments more involved? And that's a complicated answer. Other democratic governments, for example, in the European Union, have scaled back their own funding for pro-democracy work over the past 10 years as well. I think there was a sense that the US was very reliable and would continue to fund this, and so it didn't really matter. But what we've seen is that in one fell swoop, because of one government's actions, this entire system of vital work is really in danger of dying, and there will be nothing left in its place.
What is the impact to the US and other Western countries of losing the visibility into China that these organizations provide?
So the reason that this information is so valuable, and certainly it's valuable on its own merits, it's incredibly important to understand what's happening in China, how people are suffering, what the government there is actually doing, because of course the Chinese government maintains one of the world's most sophisticated censorship regimes to prevent information from leaving China or from being collected in the first place. But why does that matter for us, for people who don't inherently care about China? And it matters because the point of China's censorship regime, the point of it trying to prevent negative information about China from leaving China, is because it wants to present its system as the best system in the world. It's a one-party authoritarian state. And Beijing's big pitch to the world is that this system is at least an equal alternative to democracies and is probably superior. And it's really hard to prove that that is false, that Beijing is lying and using deception to make its case, if we don't have access to facts. And if we can't prove that Beijing is wrong, if we can't prove that its system actually is deeply flawed, then what is the whole point of fighting for democracies or even having democracies ourselves?
That was Bethany Allen from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. President Li Yu-hsiang says he will hold a meeting to mediate between all 5 branches of the central government with a focus on restoring unity. The session is expected to address conflicts between the ruling and opposition parties that have rocked Taiwan in the past year. Monday's meeting will include the legislature, a branch led by the opposition that has passed a number of controversial laws and seen members come to blows on the chamber floor. A second delegation of Shanghai city officials has been barred from entering Taiwan. The Chinese officials had planned to attend Taipei's Lantern Festival, which hosts a Shanghai pavilion every year. Taiwanese officials say the group's itinerary included unapproved tourism activities. A previous delegation's application had also been rejected. Taipei Mayor Jiang Wan-an has criticized the decision.
我们非常遗憾，今年确实打破了行之多年的惯例。我一直强调，两岸关系越紧张，越需要沟通跟交流，所以路应该越走越多。 越走越宽，开大门，走大路。
It's the first time in 8 years that Shanghai officials have been completely barred from attending the festival. Police suspect a man arrested for the murder of an elderly woman may be a serial killer after he was tied to 2 other disappearances. The 73-year-old man, surnamed Zhang, was taken in for allegedly murdering and dismembering a 71-year-old woman in Kaohsiung. Investigators later found blood in his apartment. DNA samples linked this to 2 other missing women, including Zhang's sister-in-law. All 3 women were in their 70s. Police are investigating the cases as serial killings. The Pacific island nation of Palau is working to tackle food security. Separated from other countries by hundreds of kilometers of ocean, it wants to become more self-reliant. As Rick Glauert reports, in an increasingly tense region, Palau is looking to ally Taiwan for support.
60-year-old part-time farmer Jeff Thomas took up rearing pigs a few years ago. When the global pandemic halted flights and cargo to his Pacific island home, Palau, he realized just how isolated people here are. Now, he doesn't want his family to have to depend on imported food.
Becoming a self-reliant and also with the food security, I believe that Palau will not experience more drastic shortage of food, and then everyone, I believe, will enjoy life in Palau.
To learn the ropes, he's been coming here, a farm run by Palau's diplomatic ally, Taiwan. The Taiwan Technical Mission Farm is the largest breeder of pigs in Palau, selling hundreds of piglets to the country's farmers every year. It also offers training and guidance for the country's pig rearers and offers technical veterinary support. Palau's 18,000 residents live across some 300 low-lying islands and atolls with limited farmable land. Projects like this boost productivity and wean the country off imports. It's a new target for Palau, separated from other countries by hundreds of kilometers of Pacific Ocean. It knows it could easily be cut off by severe weather or conflict. And imported and often over-processed food is having a negative impact on public health, with diseases like diabetes on the rise.
We've never had, we have obesity now as a problem in our young people. And growing up, remembering my years growing up, we never had much imported food. We were just eating what we were growing.
To help Palauans get back to growing and eating fresh produce, Taiwan is introducing new crop types, growing fruits and vegetables for schools, and providing nutrition education. This is one of Taiwan's largest missions of its kind. Strategically located between the Philippines and the US territory of Guam, Palau is an important ally to Taiwan. It's one of just 12 countries around the world to recognize its sovereignty. The self-ruled democracy is claimed by China, and Beijing objects to any official recognition of Taipei internationally. As China ups its claims over Taiwan, it's been using carrot and stick measures on Taipei's few remaining allies, like Palau, to switch allegiance to Beijing, meaning the Taiwan-Palau relationship is more important than ever.
Palau was probably the strongest ally of Taiwan. Palau constantly speak Taiwan in international space. So without Palau to voice for Taiwan, simply there will be a huge issue. And our international space suddenly just shrink so much globally, regionally, and in bilateral relations.
Tensions are rising here in the Pacific as global powers vie for influence. For the Palauans who call these remote islands home, it's a reminder that they must look to what they already have, getting back to basics, pursuing self-sufficiency, and making the most of their land. Alex Chen and Rick Lowett in Koror, Palau for TaiwanPlus.
Thailand and China have agreed to work together to take stronger action against rampant online fraud, an issue that has hurt the Southeast Asian country's reputation among tourists. The renewed vow comes as Thailand's Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra is on the 4-day visit to China. Joyce Tseng has more.
A show of confidence in Thai-Chinese relations during Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra's first official visit to Beijing. At a time when Bangkok has been working to regain the confidence of Chinese tourists amid reported kidnappings in the Southeast Asian country. Paetongtarn's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping comes on the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Xi used the occasion to commend Thailand's efforts in fighting online scams, Paetongtarn agreeing to jointly boost policing of the issue, among other collaborations.
โดยที่จะประสานความร่วมมือเชิงยุทธศาสตร์อย่างใกล้ชิดเพื่อสานต่อความสัมพันธ์ที่พิเศษนี้ถึงคนรุ่นต่อๆไปในอนาคตค่ะ
Thailand has been working to quell safety concerns by potential tourists, especially those from China, who make up the largest share of the country's visitors, even with an AI-generated video of Paetongtarn making a speech in Chinese.
亲爱的中国朋友们
It comes after a Chinese actor was allegedly trafficked last month across the Thai border to neighboring Myanmar, a hub for global multi-billion-dollar scam centers. The actor Wang Xing is one of thousands of Chinese nationals reportedly targeted by scams. After Wang's ordeal, local media reported around 10,000 Chinese tourists canceled their trips to Thailand, a threat to the Southeast Asian economy that relies on the sector for almost 20% of its GDP. Hours before Paetongtarn left for Beijing, Thailand cut power to several border areas in Myanmar to thwart operations of online scam factories, many of them thought to be run by Chinese criminal gangs.
เราไม่มีจุดที่คนจะสามารถกล่าวหาได้ว่ามีความเกี่ยวข้องเรามีส่วนเกี่ยวข้องหรือสนับสนุนให้ก่อให้เกิดสิ่งที่ผิดกฎหมาย
Aside from fraud, Xi and Paetongtarn pledged more cooperation on the digital economy, EVs, and infrastructure, including finalizing a delayed high-speed rail project linking Thailand directly to China through Laos.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Beijing faces a new trade war with the U.S., with U.S. President Donald Trump at the helm. Though Thailand is a longtime U.S. ally, it maintains strong ties with top trading partner China, relations that Beijing could rely more heavily on.
Thailand had became the big hub of industry of China, especially car and some small technology. Thailand will become more strategic partner for Thailand, not only in the economic term, but in security term. I think China will look at Thailand closely.
Amid rising tensions between the world's two superpowers, the Thai government's challenge will be to maintain its long-standing neutral position as a friend to both Washington and Beijing, building its prosperity at home and throughout the region. Dolphin Chen and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
The Prime Minister of the Cook Islands is set to travel to Beijing next week, where he's expected to sign a multilateral security and trade agreement with China. The Pacific Island nation has historically maintained close ties with New Zealand, and officials in Wellington have been caught off guard by the visit. For more on the potential landmark deal, Alec McDonald spoke to Mihai Sora, director of the Pacific Islands program at Lowy Institute.
Mihai, what is the potential breadth of cooperation between China and the Cook Islands?
China has been involved in infrastructure and development projects in the Cook Islands for years, and of course, more broadly in the region. But the visit, and particularly the framing of this visit from Prime Minister Mark Brown, suggests that there's potential deepening of engagement in areas including trade, investment, and even possibly security.
And security is one of the issues that New Zealand has raised. What are the potential implications for the Cook Islands coming to a maritime or other security arrangements with China?
Now, Cook Islands has a constitutional relationship with New Zealand. It's part of the New Zealand realm. And so you would imagine that in the interests of diplomacy, if nothing else, that Prime Minister Mark Brown would actually be more transparent in laying out what is on the table, what his intentions are, and also what he's heard from Beijing in terms of what China's intentions are for their relationship with Cook Islands. But in the absence of that, and again, against the backdrop of that intense competition, I think it's quite reasonable for the New Zealand government, other Pacific countries, and other traditional security partners to kind of scratch their head and wonder what's really in play here. Given China's surprise security pact with Solomon Islands in 2022, for example, its rapid political and security escalating relationship with Kiribati. So it's not a neutral space.
What can we learn from those other security arrangements with Kiribati, for example, and the Solomon Islands to say what might happen with the Cook Islands arrangement should it go forward?
Now, look, we don't want to put the horse before the cart, and Prime Minister Mark Brown has verbally said that he won't be considering sensitive areas of security cooperation with China. But again, in the absence of more concrete evidence of that, it's difficult to say. The security relationship between Solomon Islands and China, for example, has resulted in a muddling of security training and security assistance provision to that country. Now, what it shows to other Pacific countries is that this trend of increased transactionalism, this fueling of a bidding war essentially between traditional partners and new partners can work out in their favor. In the sense that it might encourage New Zealand and other partners to increase their offers of assistance and support to Pacific countries, at the same time courting new initiatives and new economic activities.
That was Mihai Sora, director of the Pacific Islands program at the Lowy Institute. The Asian Winter Games in Harbin, China have begun, and Taiwanese figure skater Li Yu-hsiang has been training hard to shine on the ice. Our reporter Cindy Chi went to see him in action.
Subtropical Taiwan does not leap to mind when thinking of winter sports. 18-year-old Li Yu-hsiang is one of the very few locally trained figure skaters, of whom even fewer are men. He's in training for the Asian Winter Games in Harbin, China, where he'll be Taiwan's sole representative in figure skating.
最近都加强心肺的训练，同时又要注意艺术的部分嘛，所以就加强舞蹈，然后可能多一些上下起伏这些，然后除了能同时增加心肺的功能，也能兼顾到艺术。因为你在场上走曲的时候，如果技术跟艺术都要完全兼顾的话，其实体力非常的累。
Li has been skating since he was 8 years old.
我很享受在冰上那一种速度，然后它是结合舞蹈还有其他运动，这样它又有力又有美，然后又需要技术又需要艺术的，很特别的运动。
Over the years, he has trained with coaches from different countries in the lead up to competitions. He believes that working with a variety of trainers has helped him improve faster and discover new styles.
He's a very talented figure skater, and then I think he was born in for figure skating. He was a great understanding of jumping, and then he jumped with proper temp and then control his body.
But he spends most of his time practicing alone in Taiwan.
平常自主训练，我觉得我优点在于模仿吧，就是可能在网络上看一些其他选手的照片，然后可能做对比，然后符合自己身体素质的跳跃。
But while Li often trains alone, he says that does not mean he is alone on this path.
其实如果要非常严格来讲的话，我教练应该是我的阿嬷，每天陪伴着我来溜冰，然后每天这么早起，然后陪我这么早睡觉，陪我休息。我在训练场的时候，他都在。
Li will be up against tough competition in the upcoming Asian Winter Games, but he's already made a name for himself on the world stage. In 2023, he claimed the junior men's gold at the Asian Open in Bangkok. And last year, he took the top spot at the Santa Claus Cup in Hungary. But for Li, this is only the beginning. He's determined to leave his mark on the world stage, striding with breaking into the top 10 at the Asian Winter Games in Harbin, then setting his sights on qualifying for the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan. Hang Shu and Tiny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Taipei is hosting Taiwan's biggest festival dedicated to comic and animation this week. But as Chelsea Wu reports, the star attractions come from a surprising source.
Thousands are here at Taiwan's biggest comics and animation festival to show their support for the industry and maybe even meet their idols. But this year's show is a little different. Rather than hoping to see their favorite artists or voice actors, many are here to see virtual idols, or VTubers. These virtual entertainers exist only online, as computer-generated avatars. VTubers host discussions, Q&As, and sell their merchandise through live streams. And their big business.
大家好啊！在这个冷冷的天气里，现场感觉好温暖的呀。
The industry is predicted to reach over $1.5 billion this year, and grow to 3 times that by 2030. In this year's festival, 22 Taiwanese VTuber girls are making their way on stage for the first time ever at an anime expo.
然后我就是因为比较喜欢他，然后喜欢他们整个公司的，就是都有去订阅这样。
他有点杂谈像，就聊天，然后唱歌，对。
VTubers originated in Japan in the mid-2010s, and the most popular characters are still Japanese. But that's changing. At this year's festival, Taiwanese VTubers are making their debut. In 2023, more than 40% of the top 100 most profitable YouTube live streaming rewards in Taiwan came from Taiwanese VTubers. The industry is becoming so big that companies are signing deals with these characters, who are expected to be able to dance and sing.
我们公司主要是唱歌跟声音好听，对，然后舞蹈的部分其实不用太好没关系，但是我们公司也会做培训、做教学。
But despite the undeniable success of these virtual idols, not everyone is convinced.
知道，然后我一开始是觉得他非常的怪，因为我们其实一开始不习惯看说这种二次元的直播主。
With Taiwanese VTubers making their first appearance at this year's festival, these digital personas are moving from on-screen idols to real-world sensations here in Taiwan. And whether you're a fan or a skeptic, one thing seems certain: VTubers are here to stay. Kamashi, Ed Moon, and Chelsea Wu for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out Brazilian photographer Sebastião Salgado's new exhibition in Mexico, which highlights the Amazon region and its ecosystems. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, be sure to follow TaiwanPlus News on social media.